Hello, everyone. We're excited to have you here with us today as we give you an inside look at how we use Front here at Front. Before we do dive into the more advanced workflows, I want to give a quick primer for those of you who are new. So to start, we're going to focus our attention up here at the left-hand corner. I want to share one important advice that was given to me by one of my customers a while back, and that is that if you want to have a successful rollout of Front, which we all do hope you want, you need to define where your team's focus areas are. So these focus areas are going to look different for every team, but defining this for yourself and your team early on makes it an easier transition and an overall better experience for everyone. So for us, one of our focus areas is this individual workspace. This workspace is made up of my own individual inbox, which is private to myself, as well as conversations that I own from the team, which is in this assigned to me section. I know we haven't yet talked about this notion of assigned conversations, but we will in just a second. Now, in my individual workspace, I also have these workspace tags where I can pin tags that I care about that are both public and private, and quickly navigate to conversations that have those tags. Now, down below here, you'll also be able to see your team workspace. So this is where you'll be able to have a bird's eye view of all of the team inboxes you have access to and manage those messages accordingly. Now, each team inbox provides a conversation pipeline that allows your team to work more efficiently through those team inboxes. So I'm going to take you here into our customer success folder, and you can take a look at some of the conversations that are here for us. Now, in this unassigned view, this is the pipeline over here. In the unassigned view is where you'll be able to see your net new messages, messages that are ready to be assigned to people within the organization. So for instance, here we are doing a webinar, right, getting started with Front that starts in about an hour. I'm going to be able to assign this conversation to, let's say, myself if I'm the one handling this webinar. Now, everyone will be able to see this animation, so there's a clear owner of who owns that conversation. Now, following on through the pipeline is in the open view. This is where you'll be able to see all of the messages that have been assigned to yourself or a colleague from the team inbox that you're in, providing you with some transparency into what your teammates are working on. And of course, once you're done with this, I don't need to handle this, I can archive it, and that message is going to go to the very end of the pipeline into the all section. This is where you can see all of your entire inbox history, as well as where you'll want to search through for any historic and or archived conversations. So moving on into the conversation itself, you have all of the fields that you're familiar with when it comes to replying to an email, but we supercharge your productivity with new features like snoozing, shared drafts, canned responses, tags. These are all located at the bottom of the composing email. Now, canned responses allow your teams to keep a consistent voice when it comes to responding to commonly asked questions, and tags allow you to track what those types of conversations are about. So this is where you'll be able to see canned responses and tags. You can add them over here. Now, snoozing, which is over here, allows you to boomerang a message back to the top of your inbox if you don't hear back from a customer after a set amount of time. So if I put a snooze for 2 days and I don't hear back from my customer in 2 days, it's going to boomerang to the top of my inbox. This way, you don't have to make mental notes to follow up anymore. You can let Front do that for you. And shared drafts is a great way for your team to review and collaborate on one email draft, as opposed to sending, those conversations with the subject lines that start off with internal only. You know what I'm talking about. And on the note of collaboration, this is a perfect segue into the bread and butter of Front, which is down here. As I alluded to with the shared drafts, letting teams work together is a big thing we emphasize here, and nothing exemplifies this more than our comments and mention features. So I'm going to mention Sarah here on our conversation and see if she knows how I can find this package. Oops, they are in. Perfect. And so now So using the comment bar here at the bottom of the conversation, I'm able to send an internal comment to my team members, and these comments are internal only. So your customers won't be able to see them, and you can feel free to have an open dialogue about the conversation. Not only does this allow you to easily loop in necessary people on one conversation, but the comments also serve as historical references should someone need to figure out why a decision was made the way it was. Now, the goal here is to reduce internal emails by making it easier to have these conversation-specific chats with your team. It's intuitive, it's fast, and people get it. All right, so that's a quick orientation of the key areas of Front that everyone sees and uses. So we're going to sort of shift gears now and focus on the detailed workflows we use here at Front, starting off with the individual inbox first. Now, if you do have any questions thus far, please feel free to put them in the questions section as well, and we will get to them at the very end. All right, so again, we're coming back to this personal inbox. So here, just to give you some information and insight into how we do things, everyone here at Front manages their individual inboxes from Front. Now, for me, to be honest, it was a little daunting at first because when you think about Front, you think about everything being shared, that transparency, that collaboration. But let me assure you that we take your personal privacy very seriously, and your personal inboxes are private. The way to really think about this is that by adding your individual inboxes to Front, your emails operate like classically as they would in a Gmail or a Office 365. You can reply, you can tag conversations, but what you don't get from there is you don't get the added collaborative benefits of Front, like some of the things that we've already talked about. Now, at the end of the day, there are a lot of things in your personal inbox that you like feedback on. So, for instance, this conversation that I'm looking at. Some examples that I like to talk through are that when customers email a newly hired customer success manager on our team, asking them about product-related questions, because they're new, they might not have all of the answers, and so they'll do their best to draft a email, but then they'll be able to share that draft with me and mention me on the conversation to let me have sort of a quick look at that conversation. So here, this is a conversation from Sarah. Let's say Sarah is a customer of ours. And I can actually, let's say I'm the new hire, I can go through this and write what I think this information might be found. So I can be like, hi, Sarah, this information can be found in our community page. Oops, community page. Now I'm going to go ahead and share this draft and actually mention another Sarah on our team here and ask her to review my draft and maybe put a link directly to where she can find this article, or maybe just a link to the community page because I don't know where that is. Can you check my draft? So here you can actually see that she will be able to look over my draft, make those edits, and then pass that back to me by letting me know in a comment. So I think this is a really interesting thing to point out because a lot of people have sort of a hesitation to bring in their individual inbox, but because we do rely on our team with work that comes through our individual inbox, it's a really big value add to be able to actually comment at people instead of having to splinter off your conversations for internal and then internal discussions. Now, the same things go for other functions within our company. So product manager, our product marketing manager, she loops me in for conversations regarding integrations, whether these are integrations that our customers are actually interested in, or our recruiter who is keeping me in the loop with potential candidates that we're interviewing and their timeline. So with all of this, we are able to keep our own inboxes as clean as possible by looping people into your conversations as opposed to, again, splintering those conversations out and creating more conversations that are then necessary. And it's a huge win for anyone who is obsessed about getting to inbox zero, which I definitely am. Now, of course, everyone has their own preferences for how they work out of their individual inboxes, and we aren't here to say that there's one right way to work, but to show you that you can really customize your workspace for your own need. So for me, as a CSM, I've built a lot of relationships with my clients. So as I onboard my customers, I'm just going to edit this draft to let me take over. As I work with my customers, I like to create workflows that are easily repeatable, and I'm confident in the content of that message. So what we've done here is create public canned response templates for the entire team, so all customer success managers can tap into them when they introduce themselves to new customers. But I've also created private responses that I've tailored to how I like to follow up with my customers, and I've hotkeyed them so I don't have to always click the canned response icon at the bottom of the composer to access it. So traditionally, what folks would be doing is go through here and say like, all right, I'm going to look for follow-up, and I'm going to look for this. This is one of the ones that we like to use here. But instead of using that, I don't have to go through any of that. I can hotkey my canned response by doing Shift Command and the number, and then all of that content is already put out really quickly. So I don't have to go through a two-step process. If there are canned responses that you and your team use often, take this productivity move and create your canned response, hotkey it, and then you'll be able to access it anywhere within Front. All right. And now sort of shifting gears over here to the bottom side of your personal workspace. The tag section allows for quick access to messages you and or your team find important. So you can pin private, which you can see here have the little icon, the little lock icon on them, or public tags or team tags that are visible to everyone. So for our client services team that work closely with our large enterprise accounts, some of what they've done is for each client, they've created a unique tag and actually put that client tag over here. And so when they come in, the first thing that they do when they come in during the morning is click on those unique tags and work through all of those conversations, since those are high priority for her. And then she goes through and cleans out the rest of her inbox. Now, for me, that's not scalable since I have 200 accounts that I manage, and there's no way I could have 200 tags out here. That would be pretty crazy, and I would not be able to manage that myself. So instead, how I actually work on this workspace tag is more feature related. So I want to know who of my customers are talking about wanting live chat, who has urgent inquiries, what conversations have I made important and did I star. Now you can see here that I have a tag for live chat. Live chat is something that we are building out, and we will be doing a webinar on this in the next couple of, I think maybe next month. And so keep an eye out for that. This is a little secret for all of you who are here in our webinar today. Now, one thing that sort of, if you sort of think about how my colleague does it when she manages her enterprise clients and actually tags all of these clients with a unique tag, you might be wondering to yourself, wow, that's pretty manual if she has to tag it every single time. But the reality is you don't actually have to make it manual because we've built out a rules engine that applies for both your personal workspace as well as for the team workspace. And so here in my individual workspace, if I just go to my settings and I go to my rules over here, you can see some rules that I've moved myself or that I've created myself that allow me to really prioritize my inbox so that it's at the end of the day, my inbox is as clean as possible by archiving things that I don't really care about. So for instance, I get some automated reports that I know I want to have in my inbox, but I don't need to read every day. So I can archive those as well as move conversations to the right place if based on some keywords within the message that I'm getting. So if you do add your individual inboxes to Front, this is definitely something that I encourage you to do, is really think through what you should be doing within your inbox, what kind of messages you're getting, and how you really want to sort of set up your inbox in a way that allows you to have a clean inbox and really prioritize the things that make sense for you. So Again, another one that we sort of touched on earlier on, sort of referring back to the colleague case that I was talking about, you can create tag rules that auto tag conversations with a unique client tag depending on the domain of which your client is reaching out to or writing to you with. So that's a little bit more about how we approach the individual inbox and why we encourage people to add it. Not only does it allow you to streamline where you're working, so you don't have to have a tab open for Front and another tab open for Gmail or Outlook or whatever email provider you're using. You can just have it all in one place. But also the collaborative features bleed through not just the team inbox, but also into your productivity, into your personal workspace. Now moving on to the shared inboxes, again, we're going to start by covering some basic details first. And so a team inbox is where you can connect external communication accounts to Front so you can manage them in one central place. So unlike distribution lists, and I'm going to click here, unlike distribution lists where everyone has their own copy of an email in their own inbox, in Front, think of every copy as being a master copy. So when an email comes into a support inbox, for example, there's just one copy of that email. If you assign it to a person, it's assigned for everyone. If you make a comment, everyone with access to that conversation will see that comment. There's just one copy. And with everyone working off that same master copy, there's very little room to no room for error when it comes to duplicating work or losing something within your inbox. Now going into the more advanced side of how we work, you can see here we have some support folders, and this is how we create escalation points within Front. So we have tier 1, tier 2, urgent, and this allows us to, one, consolidate how messages come into support, and then how we divvy up that support work to the proper team. So one thing that we talked about in our very first webinar about being customer-centric is that our approach to customer service is not just having a support team and an account management team that does support and supports our customer, but that our supporting of our customer spans across our entire organization. So if it's a marketing question, we'll loop marketing in. If it's an engineering or bug question, engineering is looped in. But how do you do that in a way that is productive, right? So not everyone is bombarding in one email inbox, but there's actually sort of a split of escalation. And so here, if we talk about tier 1, this is our catch-all inbox. So if you think about the emails that are coming in via bugs at hello at info at things that these sort of email addresses that you can have across all of your website, we consolidate all of those into one inbox, support tier 1. Now, as those conversations bubble up or become more technical and are sort of beyond the scope of what our non-technical support team can handle, we then move those conversations into tier 2. So this idea of moving a conversation to the right folder so that they can own that conversation is very, very important and allows us to achieve that sort of defining of workspaces for different kinds of teams and what they own. So I just moved that conversation from customer feedback into tier 2. I'm going to move it back to feedback, and that's just a really good way for you to operate and think about these conversations and the fluidity of how they can move from one inbox to another. Going back again to what we were talking about for our engineers operate out of tier 2 and our urgent folders, and there's several ways that they work in this sort of escalation path. One that we've already highlighted by moving those messages from support tier 1 into tier 2, and our engineers don't have to look through password reset type inquiries, but really focus on bug conversations. We also do have other things like rules that we'll talk about a little bit later that escalate conversations if, let's say, they haven't been handled in 24 hours or the subject line says urgent in it and it's by one of our VIP customers. So those are things that you can start to think about. Now, over here, when we talk about transparency within our organization, one sort of story that I like to share is that when we hired our product manager about a year ago, she sent out an email campaign soliciting some information from our customers. Some of you probably got those emails, and some of you responded, so thank you. And this actually sort of spurred a interesting culture within Front, in that we created this customer feedback folder. So she created a rule that moved all of those conversations from her personal inbox. Because we sent it as a campaign, we were able to target the subject line of the conversation. So when a reply came in, she had a rule that moved that conversation from her personal inbox into this team customer feedback folder. And that allowed all of us, not just her, but our customer team, our marketing team, our sales team, to really have visibility into what our customers were asking, what problems they had, and how they wanted us to help them. Now, this sort of then continued to spiral into sort of building a more customer-centric culture, where we now also have NPS going into this, where that sort of feedback is going into this folder, where we can see why people are essentially rating us the way they are, and soliciting more feedback on how we can make their experience better. And of course, everyone's got to love Twitter when everyone does make, when you add your company Twitter account to Front, as people do tweet us, we love to use our internal commenting, and you can actually mention all to get everyone's attention. And I can do this like webinar in progress. Things are going great. And then I can make a star. Perfect. Yay. And so when I do this, everyone will be mentioned on this conversation. They will get a notification. And this is just a really fun way to collaborate with the team, making sure everyone is being looped in on conversations that they need to be looped in on. And it just fosters, I think, a different culture in how your company works and how your company communicates with each other. That's really awesome. Corey's our support manager, and so you'll probably hear from her if you have any questions. But this is sort of how you can see everyone loves to participate, and it's a really, really good culture to have. Now, all right, so a lot of people are responding, which is fantastic. But I'm going to sort of segue away here and go back to this customer feedback here, because it's important for us to recognize that in order for a company to grow, you have to be very cognizant about what your customers are talking about, and make sure that you're treating them right by having a good experience. And so in order to have a good experience, right, we previously talked about powering yourself, your individual, and how you work within not just the team inboxes, but also your personal inboxes. And so in order to talk about this productivity, we're going to talk about this panel here, the conversation panel, and really talk through some of these things in more detail. So we already talked about hotkeys and canned responses. One thing to note here, and I use this a lot when I talk to my customers, is using the dynamic variables. So the dynamic variables allow you and your team to create these templates that are personal when you actually implement the canned responses. So as we are having conversations with our customers, Front is actually creating these contact cards for them. And so when you create a template and leverage a canned response, we'll be able to automatically pull the contact card, decipher what information needs to go in here into your dynamic variables, and put it in and personalize it. Now, there's some pretty awesome things that you can also think about in terms of the features within Front. One thing that I want to sort of highlight is that features, I know we're sort of talking about them here one-on-one, highlighting them individually, but in order to really have the best Front setup for yourself, you need to think about Front's features as living within an ecosystem, and they all work together. So if I think about using this canned response, what I can also have in the back end, if I want to track how many calls am I setting up on a week-to-week basis, so I can tell my manager, I can think about this in the context of a rule as well. So when I send this message, and we'll talk, and I'll sort of show you this later on as well, when I send this message, I can say, when I have an outbound message that I send out, If this sentence is being used, then I want to automatically tag this conversation with, let's say, Calendly, which is how I like to track my calls. Now, in addition to this, there is some other pretty awesome feedback points or features within Front that do help you be more productive. And one of those things that I really like to talk about is read receipts. So read receipts here, by default, Front allows you, or Front will embed a pixel in your communications that you send to your customers. And so this will give you some insight into one, when they've read it, and two, allow you to really hone in on your messaging, right? Because if you can see that this person hasn't read it, you might not tailor the conversation as just continuing on, but more so maybe I'll change the subject line so it's more catchy. But if they did read it and they've read it multiple times, maybe it would be a good way to inform your responses being, hey, just wanted to, get in touch with you to see if you have any questions, because maybe they're deliberating something on their side. So this is something that you should definitely consider using. It's turned on by default, so everyone is already using it, but make sure you keep that sort of top of mind as you do work through your emails. Now, as we were talking about sort of the tagging, and I showed you this Calendly tag, this highlighting of a tag is also very interesting because it allows you within the sort of span of your team inbox to quickly identify conversations that are important to you and or your team. This is a private tag to me, so it's only visible to myself. But if you and your team have sort of ways of operating and have things that you want to keep an eye out for, so let's say customer fills out a form. So for us, when a new lead signs up for our sales team, they fill out a form and that lead information comes into our inbox. And so for those, we want to make sure that we're getting on top of those really quickly. So we have a rule in place that will automatically tag that conversation because we're generating those emails ourselves based on the subject line, and that says new lead, and any salesperson will then jump in, pick up that lead, and try to get in touch with those people. So that's how we sort of keep on top of our sales funnel. But this can be applied to anything like support, right? Where you have sort of internal SLAs. I want my team to handle all live chats within 5 minutes and all emails within 24 hours. So that's something that you can certainly discern within rules and create that, and then create tags that create rules that will auto tag those conversations and highlight them so it's easily visible within your conversation list. And of course, snoozing. If you have any sort of, when we were talking about snoozing and reminders, this is a very important piece of how people work. It can be sort of foreign to people who aren't familiar with this concept, but once you get in the hang of things, you'll really realize, one, using snoozes and reminders really help clean up your inbox because you don't have to have it sitting there anymore. You can, say, hey, just wanted to follow up. We'll give you a call in a couple of days. And so you don't have to make a mental note of this. I can just actually put a reminder for a couple of days and send off this email. In a couple of days, I'll have this email come back into my inbox, and then I'll address it at that point. So it's really a good mechanism for you to help you and your team strive towards that inbox zero, again, for both the personal and also the work inbox. All right, so I think one last thing here on the conversation panel is the commenting. I know if you've talked to someone on our side, a lot of the times this commenting has been sort of positioned as a way to collaborate internally, right? We're using the @mention to talk to people within our organization. But another way to think about this is a perfect place for you to take notes. If I'm on a call, if I'm talking to someone, and I want to jot down really quick notes that I can refer to later on in my email, there's no better place to do that than commenting. I can write these notes here. It's all time tracked, and of course, if I share my draft later, the person that is reviewing my draft can also see the notes that I've put in, and then be able to give me some better suggestions on how I can hone in my response, and so on and so forth. So don't don't think about these only in the context of which we're sharing it with you, but think about it and adapt it to really how your team works. If you guys are phone heavy, if you're an organization or team that is very phone heavy, then you might want to take these opportunities to actually use this as a note-taking medium instead of actually having a separate notepad. So everything is saved in one place. Now, to talk a little bit more about the integrations, you can actually see here in my signature, I have this, how helpful was my response? So Front is actually integrated with a lot of different technologies, and this is the way that allows you to, again, sort of circling back to the personal productivity, we want people to be able to stay in one place when they work and not have to go through and switch through so many screens, go through so many flows before you get your action sort of before you are able to either submit a ticket or create a project task. And so a couple of our integrations are geared towards that. But this integration here, this is with Nice Reply. This is for CSAT surveys. And it's really interesting here because this will allow you to get a per message response on how people think about how you're writing. So instead of the whole conversation, the whole experience was great or medium or bad, they can actually pinpoint specific messages where we had really good responses or really bad responses and really reflect on whether that was a canned response that we need to fix or should this person just get better training on how they respond in certain situations. So all of this information is captured in Nice Reply, and you can use it to use the information from Nice Reply to then find these messages within Front. Now we also have other things like PagerDuty for folks that are on engineering teams who rely on those kinds of alerts within rules. But we also have things like an education-based integrations like ForumB. So if you've ever checked out our community page, which I can also show you here, let's say analytics. This is our community page. So our community page is built on ForumB, which we also integrate well with. The ForumB, ForumB has a great way of organizing that allows us to really build out some resources that are specific to my team, as well as general resources that our customers find very helpful. And so here, if a customer is ever asking me about some analytics questions, I can, instead of having to go to ForumB and find the URL, copy it, come back in and paste it, I can actually come here and just type analytics and paste that directly here. It's hyperlinked and everything's fine and dandy. So these are just some of the integrations that we work on within our support side of things. You can also create some other integrations like with Trello, Jira, GitHub, Asana. These are really great ways for us if you ever provide us with product feedback. This is how we do it. You send us an email, I will respond to it, I'll synthesize what your information is. I'm going to say this is for testing a demo, but here realistically I will put a subject line of what the feature request is, why you have requested it, and what I expect the behavior to be. And then I can assign it to our product manager directly here. Now, once I create this, it'll be linked to the conversation. So there's a two-way sync between Front and also GitHub, as well as with Jira as well. And let's say as of course a lot of things on the product roadmap, it does take some time to actually get these things built out. So I'm going to archive this conversation, and let's say our engineering team finally does build out this product. Once they close that ticket in GitHub, that conversation will automatically resurface within Front, and that allows me to then tell my customers, hey, we built this out, go check it out. So that's just another sort of lens on how we use some of the integrations here on our support side. And for our sales teams, of course, CRM is a big, big way in how they operate and track their sales pipeline. And so for this, I'm going to go to a conversation here for Jeff Lebowski. Give me a second here. I'm going to go ahead here, find this email address and paste it in. And so Salesforce is the CRM we use here. We also integrate with several other CRMs as well. But this CRM integration with Salesforce gives us a two-way sync between the data that we have here, or the conversation that we see here, and the data we have within Salesforce. So we can edit any of this information here, and that will automatically be reflected within Salesforce. So again, going back to the productivity thing, I know we're talking a lot about it, but that's sort of the core ways in how we think about our design philosophy is we want to make people more productive in how they work. And so again, here we're allowing you to create new opportunities, edit existing account information, all from within your inbox. Now, of course, if you are a business that has a lot of your own proprietary information, you can build something like what we have here, our own HQ. So we have an open API that allows you to really connect your back-end systems and your back-end solutions with front. So again, when you look at a conversation like this and you go to another conversation, we're essentially looking at the email address that the person wrote in with, and then we send that information to you. You can then use that information and basically comb through your database and surface any information that you deem is helpful for your team. And so I think one thing, and I just went to a client on site just the other day who works in real estate and sort of rental properties. What they're looking to build is actually using this information, ping my database. I want to see what property they're going to be looking into renting. How long is their stay? Did they write anything in terms of anything being broken? And then also being able to handle refund requests directly from this plugin of theirs. All right, and so the last thing that we're going to really be talking about is rules. Rules is a huge part of how, if you think about sort of being a productive organization, rules plays a very big part in that. We've sort of obviously talked a lot about this throughout our demo today, thinking about escalation paths, talking about auto tagging conversations, routing things to where they need to go automatically. And we'll talk a little bit more about them here and also show you some resources that you can actually use to see some of the most popular rules that we've built here within Front. But to start, again, we're going to just go through some support ones. And I'll just show you here. We have support SLA rules here. So when something comes in and it's unreplied after 1 hour and is unassigned, send it directly to our internal tech support team on Slack. So there's that. And then you can also obviously have, support. Oops, I spelled that wrong. You can also have move to AWS tier 2. So if it's from our AWS servers, then I want to automatically move it to tier 2 because that's not something our regular support agents need to be bothered with. Now, when it comes to routing requests and feedback using specific keywords, that's something that you can also do as well. So we use something called TestFlight to test our beta products, mobile and also desktop. And so if anything comes back through those feedback, we obviously want to make sure our mobile experience is really great. So when those feedbacks come in, those are obviously generated with the subject line. So we were able to pinpoint those conversations and assign them directly to Pierre, who is our mobile engineer. Now, just to go over some other things that we do sort of on not the support side, but more on the sales side, for our commercial team, when they create rules, sort of when these new leads come in, you know how we were talking about how new leads come in, you can auto tag those leads. We can easily do that here by, again, saying inbound lead when it comes into our sales inbox, and the subject of that email is new lead. Then you can do that thing as adding a tag hot lead. So you can do that. Or if it's more fair within your organization and you want to round robin it within your staff, you can then actually assign it to a group and assign it in round robin fashion to XYZ people. And so this will take into account whether they are out of office as well. So if someone is out of office or on vacation or sick, they won't get a random lead as well. And then, of course, there are some other productivity moves as well. As you think about creating some shortcuts within how you operate, you can also do that through the comment section. So again, the commenting section isn't just for your team to loop in other people, but is also an avenue for you to trigger rules, to do shortcuts. So let's say if I comment in the sales inbox and the comment body contains bad lead, then what we might want to do is, let's say, reply with always this one canned response that we use for our leads. This is not the real canned response since that's out of office email, but you can get the gist of sort of how you continue to build this through. Now, if you do have any questions about rules and workflows and how to bridge the gap between how you do things currently and how you can do those things within Front, please get in touch with an account manager, your success manager, or just write in and reach out to us directly. You can always reach out to us at team@frontapp.com, or you can always click talk to us here, and that'll surface an in-app chat that will allow you to communicate directly with us. And so that wraps up the more in-depth demo of how we do things here at Front. There's a lot more stuff we can share, but we definitely want to be cognizant of your time. We do look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you so much.